Is this it? Is the end of the GPUpocalypse finally upon us? Availability is high and prices are coming down. You can even find GPUs in stock at MSRP, sometimes even under. Plus, prices aren't tied to the value of Ethereum anymore. So what gives? Why are they falling? And should you buy now or continue to wait? Let's talk about it. Last October, I made a video talking about why the GPU market was such a dumpster fire. And while I didn't want to make that video, I felt like I had to. But this one I'm more than happy to be making. But it shouldn't be any news that the GPU market has been like a complete show for over the last 2 years. So what changed? Well, part of it has to do with the economy, and one of the things I talked about in that video was the inflation rate, which seems to be growing exponentially lately. Well, it appears that governments are finally taking steps to curb this. And obviously this is an oversimplification of what's going on. There's more to this than just inflation. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it, but Brian over at Tech Yes City has a great video going into detail, and I'll link that video down in the description if you want to dive more into the econ aspect of this. But another thing that's going to help, at least for the US market, is the US government has finally lifted tariffs on GPUs and motherboards. And by the time you're seeing this, it could have already started to impact prices. ASUS, for one, said they'd be lowering prices by 25% at the start of April, and that should reflect on prices throughout early spring. Hopefully this doesn't all play out as a finely crafted April Fool's joke. As for the other reason, well, it's mining. But this time it's a good thing. Not that they've stopped, but for one, Ethereum difficulty has continually been going up and miners' profitability keeps going down. Something on the order of about 45% since November of last year. This is helped by Ethereum dropping significantly as well. This means paying off any new hardware takes a lot longer. And to add insult to injury, power costs are on the rise in some areas. When you put all that together with the looming Ethereum merge, Ethereum miners with any sense have cooled on buying new hardware since they'll likely never see the break-even point, let alone a return. And if you look on the used market, you can even find miners starting to sell off their hardware. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I've been keeping my eye on the merge, and while it was slated for June, it looks like that's not happening and they're pushing it back again. Also, while Ethereum's value has been trending down, it's recently rallied by about $1,000, and difficulty had been trending up pretty consistently, but lately it's somewhat flattened out. Likely due to people not adding more GPUs to the network. Also, while used mining GPUs are showing up, well, a lot of their prices are a complete joke, and sadly, there are some looming factors that could impact prices in the future. Silicon wafer ingots, the things that processors are printed on, are projected to increase by 25% by 2025 due to demand. As such, some wafer manufacturers are reporting their capacity is sold through 2024, some are sold up to 2026. To further complicate things, wafer manufacturing isn't growing at the same rate as chip foundries, so even if new fabs are popping up, they might not be able to secure the wafers needed to keep up with production. Hopefully they forecasted for this and secured enough supply. Plus, Ukraine is a big supplier of neon, which is critical in the process of cutting those wafers into individual processors. This will cause demand to increase for other suppliers, resulting in, you guessed it, higher cost, which always gets passed on to us. But don't let all of this bother you too much. Concerning the merge, I doubt they're going to kick that can much further down the road. Everything points to them being very close, and the stance is still that it's a bad idea to be buying hardware just to mine Ethereum. And while the value of Ethereum had been trending upwards, it recently dropped back down by $500. I just don't see it making a return to its glory days of November, at least not before the merge. But even if it does, difficulty was much lower in November, and any increase in mining is just going to send that difficulty back on its upwards trend, which will slowly eat into profits unless the value of Ethereum rises at the same rate as difficulty. Besides, looking at how long it takes to pay off these GPUs, I just don't see Ethereum miners buying much hardware between now and the merge. And some of these figures could even be called conservative. So these payoff times are likely even farther out, and I don't see them pushing the merge back some crazy amount to make buying these cards not a dumb idea. Like I said back in October, I just don't see Ethereum mining being an issue for the next gen launches. And I think most Ethereum miners will continue to be cautious. As for those overpriced used mining GPUs, well, obviously, don't buy them until their prices adjust accordingly. As for wafers, well, it's not like those are incredibly expensive. The blank wafers come out to costing less than most GPUs thanks to buying in bulk, and they cut them up to make multiple GPUs, so an increase of 25% might result in a 2 to 3% increase to the final product. And hopefully they start building more manufacturing facilities of these wafers to keep up with demand, but like chip foundries, they're expensive and complex. Also, thanks to processes that cut down on neon usage, chip manufacturers are saying that they have enough neon for about a year, so this shouldn't impact prices in the immediate future. So for now, prices are on the decline. And it would have been nice if they drove off a cliff in 80s action movie styling, inexplicably exploding halfway down, then landing in a pile of jagged rocks before the mangled wreck finally came to a stop. Sadly, that's not what we got, but I guess we'll just have to settle for prices rolling down a gentle slope instead. And for the people that kept saying, the scalp prices are the new prices, like they'd never go back down, well, that sure aged like gas station sushi. You know what else aged like questionable raw fish? People saying that everyone would just pivot to other coins. I've explained why this wouldn't happen on a large scale. Other YouTubers have, but people keep making these comments. The prices coming down should be a clear indicator that it's just not happening. If they could, why would they wait for the merge? Why not just continue buying other hardware to mine other coins right now? Hell, Ethereum isn't even the most profitable coin to mine depending on the GPU. A ton of people can't just pivot to other coins, at least not in the immediate future. But that doesn't mean we won't be going through this all over again in a few years. So where does that leave us right now? Prices are well down from a year ago, but a lot are still a bit off from MSRP, ranging from about 15 to 60% over. Well, you've got a couple of good options depending on what card you're looking at and if it's new or used. You've also got one option that I don't think is all that great. So you could finally cave and buy one. You could continue to wait and see how far prices drop, or you could double down and wait for next-gen cards to release towards the end of the year. First off, I want to start by saying I'm not clairvoyant. I'm just going off what I'm seeing in the market based on all the information I've been able to find. That's not to say one of any number of variables doesn't screw it all up. Anyways, while it might be tempting to finally give in a FOMO and buy one now, it might be a good idea to continue to wait depending on the card. I mean, yeah, you could go grab one, slot it into your PC and be playing games, and all of the nonsense of the last 2 years would be behind you. Not your problem anymore. Or would it? If you're anything like me, you'd be curious if you got a good deal, or you might inadvertently catch a glimpse of prices, only to see that they dropped another 25% in a week. Obviously, I'm being melodramatic, but it'd suck, right? Like I showed at the beginning of the video, there are some cards that might be as cheap as they're gonna get. Examples being direct from AMD or buying Nvidia Founders Editions from Best Buy. But that's been the case this entire time. Difference is, now you don't have to enter into the Thunderdome with bots and scalpers. Also, you can find EVGA cards at Newegg, sans Shuffle, or you can buy them direct from EVGA without having to enter the queue. And you can even see that EVGA has cut some of their prices. Best of all, it seems everyone is regularly getting more stock. Outside that, the majority of partner models from AMD and Nvidia have a ways to go, but there are some that are at, near, or even below MSRP. Just do your research before buying one. Another point for buying now is that it's possible that prices on other components could go up, offsetting any savings you could see from the GPU by continuing to wait. So if you're fine with a reference card or something from EVGA, just buy one now. But if your heart is set on a specific card from someone else, it might be better continuing to wait if that card is still well above MSRP, especially if you're considering buying something used. At the same time, I think waiting for the next-gen cards might not be a great option. Even though Ethereum mining shouldn't be an issue, just because scalpers' primary market is gone doesn't mean they are. There are gamers out there that are less sensitive to cost and will buy the new cards at inflated prices regardless. And that's not to say that partners and distributors don't beat scalpers to the punch. Fully expect this launch to be just as much of a dumpster fire as the last. Scalp prices are just a fact of life going forward with anticipated launches, unless something changes. So don't expect to initially get one of the new cards at launch for MSRP. And if you refuse to buy a new card 2 years ago because they weren't MSRP, just to buy one of the new series of cards for more than MSRP, well, that'd be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? Especially if your decision is predicated on the idea that these cards will somehow be twice as fast. And maybe, just maybe, the 4000 series will be the first to pull it off. But we hear that crap every launch, and every launch they fall well short. Yet people keep falling for it. Now, if you actually bother to read these clickbait articles, you'll find that they're basing this on the fact that they have somewhere around twice the raw performance. They do really love to talk about those teraflops. Problem is, teraflops do not directly translate to gaming performance, like, ever. It's a false equivalency. For example, if we look at the 2080 and compare it to the 3080 at launch, The 3080 was faster by about the upper 60% range. In case you needed reminding, that's not nearly double. I had a conversation with someone recently about this, and they seemed to be under the impression that 50% was. Well, it's not. In order to double performance, it would need to be a 100% increase, and outside some obscure reference from the past, I've not seen a launch in any reasonable time frame where gaming performance was actually doubled from one generation to the next. But perhaps that's not what these articles are trying to do, because it's technically true in one specific area. But these articles can lead people to believe that they're talking about gaming performance. Though I will say, a nearly 70% increase to performance is nothing to scoff at. And keep in mind that price to performance will likely be worse this generation. So you might be paying more for the same uplift, the same amount for less, more for less, or we could even get more performance at a much higher cost, even after launch. We'll just have to wait and see. Regardless, after the last 2 years, I don't think we'll be seeing the same price to performance that we saw from the theoretical MSRP of the outgoing cards. But hold on, I'm not telling you to avoid buying one of the new cards. I just want you to consider all of your options first, and if you decide to wait for the next-gen cards, just be prepared to wait an additional 2 or 3 months, possibly into 2023, to see them in stock near their original MSRP. And keep in mind that they launched the higher end cards first, so if you're into the entry level or bottom of the mid-range cards, you'll likely have to wait well into 2023 to see anything approaching those, and even they might initially be scalped as well. Also, some of the problems I talked about earlier could start to become an issue by spring of next year. So if I was looking to buy a GPU for a personal rig right now, I probably wouldn't buy one outside of a reference model, something from EVGA, or anything else as long as it's near MSRP. I'd wait. The economy is currently kind of uncertain, so this is a bit like playing the stock market, but from what I'm seeing, I expect prices to continue to drop in both the retail and used markets. And it seems John Petty Research would agree with that, and they know a hell of a lot more than I do. Now, I say retail because you can buy new GPUs secondhand, and it's a 99.9% chance that's a scalper. And they're trying to get the most out of any cards they still have left, but I just tell you not to buy from them. When you can buy that card for a similar price or less at retail, there's just zero reason to give them any of your money, at least not unless you're getting a considerable deal. Just keep in mind that warranties don't necessarily transfer between owners. For example, EVGA warranties the card, not the original purchaser, and they're not the only one, but there are others who don't. So if it's something you're considering, definitely check the warranty transfer policies of whatever brand you're looking at first. So like I said, I can see the retail market continuing to drop. Will that continue up to the merge? Maybe, but it definitely seems like prices are trending back down to MSRP. And I doubt they're going to shoot back up outside of some unforeseen circumstance. And I also don't see manufacturers pulling back production to keep prices high, as it would just make more sense to continue to drop prices to entice gamers to buy, since it's clear they're not willing to pay the high prices. However, after the merge, if they're not already at MSRP, I think they'll have to continue to drop prices due to competition from an influx of used mining GPUs on the secondhand market, at least so long as the merge doesn't happen around the same time as the next gen launches. Because if you wait too long to buy a current card at retail, Nvidia and AMD will start pulling back production at some point, possibly around those launches, especially if a lot of people opt to buy cheap used options instead. This means the prices on those cards would go up at retail, and it would really just make more sense to buy a used one at that point. And we could also see an influx of cheap cards showing up on eBay leading up to those launches from people gearing up to buy one of the new GPUs, if they didn't learn their lesson from last time, and a lot of them could still be under warranty. Regardless, waiting till shortly before the new cards launch to buy a mid-range card like a 60 series or a 66 series or something lower could be a good idea considering the lead time on when they'll finally launch the new models of those. And don't forget, Intel is eventually going to launch their Arc GPUs, but it seems like they've been kicking that can down the road about as long as the Ethereum merge. As for the used market, it's hard to say. Prices are about as consistent as my upload schedule, and while they've certainly been trending down, you have these outliers that don't seem to be budging much. While the 1070 has come down as low as the $200 mark, the 1060 can still be found selling for about as much, though it's becoming more and more regular to find them closer to $150. And the Turing cards are still selling for over $300. The Pascal and Turing 60 series cards just seem to be slow to adjust. The same can even be said for the 50 series cards as well as the 70 series from Polaris. They're just overvalued and they aren't worth considering at those prices, so my best advice would be to do your research and keep your options open. Granted, there's really nothing in the new market to help push those down. I can only assume that they're the ideal cards for mining some altcoin, otherwise people have lost their damn minds. But if that's the case and those cards continue to cost about the same as higher end cards, that's an obvious choice. Buy the higher end cards, and hopefully the next gen will bring us some much needed entry level options. But if you don't want to wait, some of the best values are the 900 series cards from Nvidia. The 964GB is the best option I can think of for under 100. Just remember, there is a 2GB version and I don't recommend that. The 970 is a great card for around 100 and the 980 is a good option from about 120 to 150, as is the RX 584GB. But I just go for whichever one of those you can find cheaper. The 980 Ti can be a good option for around 180, but much more than that, and I just go with the 1070. And definitely don't spend more than around 200 if you can find a 3050 for close to MSRP. At around 300, the 1080 is a good option if you can get it closer to 270, but much more than that, and the RX 6600 is a better buy. Above that, the 1080 is a good option if you can get it closer to the $370 mark. However, waiting might be the best option for the used market. Despite what some people think, the Ethereum merge is inevitable, and a lot of those cards are going to end up on the used market, but it might be more of a slow burn than people are anticipating. But it should drive the prices of these cards down even further. And if you're willing to buy a used card, you could be looking at a current GPU model for a really good price. Which brings us to the debate about whether you should pay less for an LHR card or avoid them altogether. I keep seeing gamers debate about this, and it's honestly just kind of a weird thing to be concerned about. The short answer is, it's irrelevant. Ethereum mining is on its way out, and you shouldn't be buying a GPU to mine Ethereum. You might be able to offset the cost by mining up to the merge, sure, but I just tell you to mine Raven or Ergo instead. And if you're gaming, the LHR lock does not matter. It really is a non-issue and shouldn't factor into your buying decision, period. And I get it. A lot of people are hesitant to buy used mining GPUs or even used GPUs in general, but I bought several after the last Ethereum crash and I didn't have a single problem. As long as you buy from a reputable seller and test the card thoroughly, you should be fine. And if you're wondering how to do that, you should watch this video over here. But if that's still not your thing, that's cool. All the more for me to build people awesome, inexpensive gaming PCs. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, do all the YouTube things and I'll see you in the next video.